She laughed. Not a little nervous laugh. Not the kind you hide behind your hand. A full, cruel laugh. Right there. At the dinner table. In front of her friends. In front of her mother. Because I dared to say the words, "I'm proud of you." She looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like this is your moment." And then she rolled her eyes, like I was something sticky. She stepped in. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I reached under the table, grabbed the small gift box she hadn't opened yet, the one with the gold charm bracelet inside, customized with her birthstone, and slid it back into my coat pocket. "Guess not," I whispered. The air froze. Everyone heard it, but no one said a thing. Her mother, my wife, just kept cutting into her roast beef like this was all normal. Her friends smirked. Someone whispered something that made them all giggle. I was standing on a minefield, and they were handing out grenades. So I stood up, walked to the tree, took every gift I wrapped with trembling hands and overtime pay, put them in a plastic bag, even the camera she begged for, the college hoodie from her dream school, the tiny book of affirmations I stayed up nights to write by hand. Gone. All of it. I walked it out to the car in silence. My breath fogged the cold air like ghosts trying to scream. And still no one stopped me. When I came back inside, the mood had shifted. Tamara, my wife, looked stunned, as if she finally realized this wasn't a joke. I sat down, picked up my fork, took one bite of mashed potatoes, swallowed. Then I turned to Aubrey and said, calm as anything, "You know that college fund I started when you were 10? The one with a six-figure balance?" She blinked. Her face tightened. "I emptied it this morning," I said. Her fork slipped from her hand and clanged on the plate. I didn't plan it that way. I hadn't even intended to do anything cruel. But something in me broke that night. And when a quiet man breaks, it's not loud. It's surgical. Because here's the thing no one at that table knew. That wasn't the first lie I'd heard that week. It was the 12th. And the next one would come from the woman sitting across from me. The one wearing a red wine smile and hiding a secret in her left coat pocket. But we'll get there. Oh, we'll get there. The rest of Christmas dinner moved like a dream you desperately want to wake from. The kind where everyone's smiling but you know the ground is about to give. Tamara didn't look at me once after I dropped the college fund bomb. Not even a glance. She just kept sipping from that long-stemmed wine glass like she was watching some mildly interesting reality show unravel in front of her. Aubrey stormed upstairs without saying a word. Her friends followed, whispering things I couldn't make out but didn't need to. I know the tone. I know what it's like to be the joke in someone else's story. Her brother, Darren, tried to say something neutral, something like, "Kids, right?" But it landed with a thud, and he gave up halfway through. Tamara's mom kept chewing with those tight, slow jaw movements, as if anger could be swallowed. But it was Tamara that chilled me the most. Not her silence. Not her stillness. The smirk. Subtle. There and gone. A flicker. But I saw it. That was the moment something inside me clicked. Not broke. Not yet. But shifted. You know how you can feel it when someone's done loving you? When their silence isn't peace, but punishment. Yeah, that. After dessert, untouched by anyone, people started peeling away. The house grew quieter, except for the low thud of Aubrey's bedroom, doors slamming, and muffled music coming from upstairs. Tamara finally looked at me when the last guest left. She didn't say, "Thank you for dinner." Didn't ask what I meant about the college fund. She just said, "You didn't have to humiliate her." I blinked. "You think I humiliated her?" "She's 17, Eldon." Tamara snapped, slinging her wine into the sink. "You're a grown man acting like a bitter ex-boyfriend." That sentence stayed with me. Later that night, I sat in the living room alone, the tree still glowing like it hadn't witnessed a funeral. I should have gone to bed. Should have let the day die. But then something strange happened. I heard voices, muffled low. Tamara on the phone, just down the hall in the laundry room. I never eavesdrop. I never have. But this time, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. At first it sounded normal, her best friend maybe. But then I heard it. He actually believed it was still for college. Idiot. She laughed. I froze. No, he hasn't found the envelope yet. It's still in my coat. My blood ran cold. I stayed there, silent as the shadows on the wall. She didn't know I was listening. She didn't even care to check. When she finally walked past the living room to go upstairs, I waited a full minute before I stood up, walked over to the closet, and reached into the pocket of her long gray coat. There it was. A plain, unsealed envelope. Inside, a printed agreement. A private withdrawal from Aubrey's college account. Not a small amount either. $42,000 transferred to a new checking account. One I'd never seen before. In Tamara's name. And behind it, a printed hotel reservation. 2 nights. January 3rd to 5th. Booked for 2. Paid in full. Guest names, Tamara Marsh and Isaac Delaney. I just stood there holding it all in my hands. The lies. The missing money. The man I'd never heard of. My fingers went numb. My ears buzzed. You know that feeling when you realize you were the only one playing fair in a game rigged against you? That's what this was. A goddamn rigged game. I had been saving, sacrificing, building their futures, and they were stealing behind my back. Laughing behind closed doors. Mocking me like a fool. But not for long. Because if they wanted war, they'd get it. Just not the kind they'd expect. Not loud. Not messy. No screaming matches or thrown plates. I was going to burn this all down, quietly. And no one would see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger. That would have made it simple. Anger burns hot and fast, then dies out. What I felt was colder. Heavier. Like standing in snow too long without shoes. You don't scream. You just go numb, slowly, until you stop noticing the pain. That's where I was. I stayed on the living room couch, lights off, watching the blinking reflection of the Christmas tree in the window. That envelope was still in my hand for over an hour before I even opened my laptop. I didn't want to overreact. I wanted to be absolutely sure. But by 4:13 a.m., I wasn't just sure. I was already building a plan. The college fund was under my name. Legally mine. I started it when Aubrey was 11, after I sold a classic motorcycle I'd rebuilt myself. Tamara never contributed a cent. But now she'd pulled out $42,000 behind my back and wired it into a brand new joint account. With a name I'd never heard? Isaac Delaney? I did what anyone would do. I opened the bank site and began locking things down. Password reset. 2-factor authentication. Transfer of funds. All of it. To a new private savings account I'd opened that morning. I renamed the old fund something simple. Closed_permanent. Just seeing that in bold font made me feel something strange. Not satisfaction. Not justice. Just breath. Like I was finally above water again. I didn't say a word to Tamara the next day. She came down around 11 a.m., looked mildly hungover, and acted as if nothing had happened. Not a single mention of what Aubrey had said the night before. Not a word about the gifts I had taken back. I poured her coffee. She said thanks. We moved through the morning like coworkers avoiding a shared, awkward memory. Except now I knew what she had planned. And I knew how to ruin it without ever raising my voice. By Monday, I'd done more digging. Isaac Delaney wasn't hard to track down. A LinkedIn profile, some old blog posts, a company website. He was a regional rep for a software company out of Tulsa. Mid-40s. Divorced twice. Bit of a car guy, apparently. That was the angle Tamara must have used. She hated cars. Pretended to care because she knew I cared. She used to sit in the garage with me, legs crossed, pretending to ask questions about torque wrenches just to bond with me. Turns out she was collecting strategies. Learning how to play both sides of the board. Isaac didn't seem like a genius, just available. And that was enough, apparently. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next. But I had to know how deep this thing ran. That evening, after Tamara fell asleep next to me, without so much as brushing her hand across mine, of course, I got up, quietly unplugged her phone, and took it into the bathroom. Lock screen passcode. Still the same. Her daughter's birthday. Lazy. Classic. I wasn't snooping. I was confirming. There's a difference. And there it was. The message thread with Isaac. Dozens of texts. Photos. Plans. Videos I wish I could unsee. My name came up 5 times. All of them were jokes. Punchlines. He thinks we're just friends. He believes I'm using the money to help Aubrey get a head start. He's just so safe, it's pathetic. I stared at the screen until my hand started to shake. Not out of rage. I told you, that would have been easier. This wasn't rage. This was mourning. I was grieving a life I thought I'd built with someone who saw me as a prop. A seat filler. That's when I noticed something else. A saved draft email, not sent yet, addressed to her lawyer. Subject line, early divorce inquiry, amicable separation terms. In it, she was requesting information about how to proceed with splitting assets without raising suspicion. And attached was a list. Itemized. Neatly organized. My car. My tools. My pension. The house. even the dog. They were going to gut me and move on without a fight. That's when I stopped being numb. The next morning, I bought a burner phone. Cash. Quietly backed up every file, every email, every photo and message. I sent copies to a cloud drive only I could access. I even recorded a short voice memo to myself. This isn't revenge, I said. This is rescue. I still hadn't told Tamara I knew. I hadn't said a word to Aubrey. But inside, I was already gone. And while they smiled and went about their day, I began quietly rearranging the pieces behind the curtain. Because when the curtain finally fell, I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to leave them standing on stage, exposed, alone, and applauding themselves, with no idea that the audience had long since left the room. By Thursday morning, I had most of the pieces in place. Quietly, cleanly. I had pulled the last of my personal savings out of the shared account and opened a new one at a credit union Tamara didn't even know existed. I set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box, ordered a fresh set of checks, and canceled my monthly contributions to the house fund. The one I paid into every month for repairs, that never happened. But none of that was the actual first move. The first move, the one they would feel, had to be public. Subtle, but sharp enough to make her start asking questions. To let her know something was off without fully tipping my hand. I wanted her to look at me sideways for days, wondering whether I knew. That kind of psychological pressure does more damage than yelling ever could. So I left her a gift. Not a wrapped one. Not even disguised. I wanted her to see it and misinterpret it completely. It was a simple cardboard box, about the size of a small toolkit. I placed it on the kitchen counter one morning before I left for work, deliberately early, so I'd be long gone before she came down. Inside the box was a printed photo of the hotel reservation she made with Isaac, the withdrawal slip from the college fund, and a note that simply said, "If you find this before I say anything, you'll know how close you are to losing everything." I didn't sign it. I didn't date it. Just left it sitting there with the lid half open, like I'd been interrupted and forgot to close it. By 10:06 a.m., I got a text. "What is this supposed to mean?" I didn't reply. At 10:15 a.m., "Are you trying to accuse me of something?" Still no response. 11:42 a.m., "You're acting insane, Eldon. That reservation isn't even mine." And finally, at 12:33 p.m., "You better be home tonight. We're going to talk about this face to face." No apology. No panic. Just control. That's who she was. Always one sentence away from taking the wheel. What she didn't know was that I'd already taken the keys. When I got home that evening, the box was gone. The counter was wiped clean. Tamara was in the kitchen, chopping carrots like a woman reenacting a crime scene. She didn't say a word until I walked past her. "Are you going to explain that little stunt?" she said without turning. I opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water. "What stunt?" Her knife stopped. "The box." "I didn't leave a box," I said calmly, twisting the cap. "Are you okay?" She turned to face me, eyes narrowed. "You're playing games." I shrugged. "I think you're projecting." That word, projecting, hit her harder than anything else I could have said. She knew what it meant. Knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. Her face twitched, just a flicker. "If you think I'm going to sit here and be accused." "I didn't accuse you." I cut in. "If there was something in that box that made you nervous, maybe ask yourself why." I walked out before she could respond. That night, she didn't come to bed, not even to sleep in the same room. I could hear her pacing the upstairs hallway, opening and closing drawers, whispering into her phone in the bathroom. Probably Isaac. Probably scrambling. Exactly what I wanted. I didn't need her to confess. I needed her off balance. That was step one. But step two was trickier. Aubrey. As much as I wanted to believe she was just an immature teenager parroting her mother's disrespect, I couldn't ignore the fact that she had grown colder toward me long before any of this started. Somewhere along the way, she learned to treat me like a placeholder, and I had no idea how deep her loyalty to Tamara went. So I tested it. I knocked on her door the next evening. She opened it halfway, eyes guarded, mouth already preloaded with sarcasm. "I need to talk to you," I said gently. "Can I?" A pause, then a sigh. "If you're about to guilt me over Christmas, save it." I smiled, not warm, not threatening, just calm. "It's not about that." She rolled her eyes, but opened the door wider. We sat across from each other, her on her bed, me in the desk chair. I pulled out a small envelope from my jacket and placed it on the desk between us. That's everything I ever saved for you. All the deposits, the interest, the withdrawals. It's all in there. And some other things you might want to see. She stared at it. Why are you giving me this? I'm not, I said. I'm offering it. If you open that envelope and read it, you'll understand why I've stopped trying to be your father. But once you open it, there's no going back. She didn't touch it. Not yet. But her fingers twitched. I left the room before she could ask another question. By the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I heard the soft tear of paper from behind her door. Then silence. Then, just barely, a quiet, what the hell? That's when I knew I'd lit the second fuse. They thought I'd just walk away. They thought they could plan my erasure behind closed doors, and I'd politely accept it. But I was done playing the fool. I wasn't leaving a single bridge behind. By the next morning, the house felt different. Heavier somehow. Like everyone could feel the temperature dropping, but no one wanted to admit it. The envelope I gave Aubrey was still upstairs, but the silence that followed was louder than anything we'd said to each other in weeks. I noticed the change immediately. She didn't come down for breakfast. No sarcastic comments. No dirty looks. Nothing. Just a closed door and a locked phone screen. But I knew what was happening behind it. The documents I gave her were too detailed to ignore. Bank statements. Fund transfers. Screenshots of her mom's messages to Isaac. All time-stamped. All traceable. I didn't include everything. Just enough to plant the seed. Now I waited for it to grow. Tamara, meanwhile, was unraveling by the hour. She started cleaning obsessively, something she only did when she was spiraling. She bleached the kitchen counters 3 times, reorganized the fridge alphabetically, who even does that, and began asking questions she already knew the answers to, just to gauge my tone. Did you take out the trash last night? Yeah. Are you sure? I just looked at her, letting the silence do the work. She held my gaze for a second longer than usual, then walked away without another word. That was becoming her pattern. Challenge, retreat, repeat. Like a boxer who keeps feinting punches but never commits, because deep down, they're afraid of what happens when the other guy swings back. She knew something was off. She just didn't know how much I knew, or how far I'd go with it. That changed on Saturday. It started when she tried to log into the college account again. I'd already changed everything, passwords, recovery options, even the registered phone number. But I had set up an alert system just in case, and that morning, it pinged my phone 3 times in under a minute. 3 failed login attempts from a device registered to her. I didn't confront her. That's what she wanted, a direct fight. Something she could twist into he's being paranoid again, if this ever reached anyone else. Instead, I printed the alert log, circled the timestamp in red marker, and taped it to her mirror in the bathroom. No note. No signature. Just the paper, waiting for her reflection to meet it. It took exactly 11 minutes after she woke up. She stormed into the living room, still in her robe, waving the paper in her hand like it was a subpoena. What is this, Eldon? Are you tracking me now? I didn't look up from my coffee. Just wanted to remind you that even locked doors still leave footprints. Her mouth opened, then shut again. That was mistake number 1, reacting emotionally. Tamara didn't do that. Not unless she was slipping. I could see it now, the effort it took to stay composed. The way her jaw clenched tighter with every second I didn't rise to her bait. She dropped the paper on the counter and walked out. That was the second mistake, walking away without finishing the conversation. She was off script now, improvising. That's when people make the biggest errors. I waited 20 more minutes, then went upstairs and knocked on Aubrey's door. She opened it this time without hesitation. Is she okay? I asked. Aubrey shrugged. She hasn't said a word to me since last night. You read the papers? She nodded slowly. Was it all real? Every word, I said. I kept the worst of it out. For now. She looked away, eyes bouncing between the floor and the edge of her desk. You're leaving, aren't you? I took a long breath. Eventually. But not yet. Why not? And there it was, the first real moment between us in years. A crack in the wall she'd built since childhood. She wasn't asking like a teenager being dramatic. She was asking like someone who just found out their map of the world had been drawn in pencil. Because, I said gently, she doesn't get to walk away clean. By Sunday, Tamara's third mistake arrived. She called her sister. Loudly. In the kitchen. With the volume turned up and the door open. Like she wanted me to hear it. He's being weird, she said. Passive-aggressive. I think he found something. Then the kicker. Do you still have that lawyer's number? I smiled to myself. She was starting to panic. But she was still underestimating me. That was her biggest blind spot. She thought because I wasn't loud, I wasn't dangerous. Because I didn't slam doors or throw accusations, I wouldn't retaliate. She thought I'd let her divide the house like a spreadsheet, hand over the dog, cry over a judge's desk, and vanish quietly into the sad man's sunset. What she didn't realize was that I didn't want the house anymore. Didn't want the dog. Didn't even want the furniture. What I wanted was exposure, to pull off the curtain and show everyone what she looked like when the spotlight hit the truth. And I already had the perfect opportunity. Her company's winter gala was coming up. 2 weeks out. Formal. Black tie. Speeches, awards, press. Her boss would be there. So would Isaac. I'd already seen the emails. He'd been invited under the table as her +1, listed in the system under a fake last name. She thought I didn't know. She thought I wouldn't show. But I had already ordered my tux. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in a kind of quiet doom. It didn't feel like revenge. Not exactly. It felt more like watching the weather change from inside a house you know you'll be forced to leave, but not before one final lightning strike. Tamara left the house early, dressed in the same black silk gown she wore to her last company event, the one I bought her 3 years ago after she claimed she never felt elegant enough at formal events. I remember how she cried when she opened the box, said it made her feel seen. That memory still lived somewhere inside me, but by now it felt like someone else's life. She didn't know I'd be attending the gala. My name wasn't on the official list. I didn't RSVP. I knew the event planner, Lena, from years ago. I'd helped her brother land an internship back when I worked in IT. She still owed me a favor, and this was how I called it in. No one questioned my presence. I walked through the entrance like I belonged there, which, at one point, I did, before she turned me into a placeholder. The ballroom was glittering, loud, the kind of sterile, rich energy where people smile too hard and pretend they're not constantly scanning for someone more important to talk to. Tamara was near the champagne bar, hand lightly touching Isaac's arm. I watched her lean into him the way she used to lean into me. That same practiced tilt of the head, the laugh she always saved for men she wanted something from. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just cold. I didn't approach them. That wasn't the play. The real damage had already been prepared. At 8:37 p.m., Tamara was due to give her annual team growth speech on stage. A tradition. Her moment. She loved the spotlight. It validated her like oxygen. And this year was supposed to be her big pitch for promotion. Director level. I had submitted a last-minute video on her behalf. The event planner scheduled it as a surprise employee montage, supposedly clips from her team expressing gratitude and admiration. She'd even seen the placeholder slide in rehearsal earlier that week. A beautiful thank you to Tamara Marsh, our guiding star. Except the video that played wasn't that. The lights dimmed. People clapped, expecting sentiment. Then silence fell as the screen lit up with a clean, gray background. A screen recording. Dated. Timestamped. The first frame, Tamara's email to Isaac. Don't worry, he has no idea about the hotel. I told him it was a girls' spa trip. Second frame. The transaction history from Aubrey's college fund, highlighting the exact withdrawal. Labeled, unauthorized transfer. The room stayed frozen in silence. And then came the final clip, audio. Just 6 seconds. Her voice. I'm not staying with him out of love. I'm staying because I want the house, the car, and to bleed him dry when I'm ready. Gasps. Shifting chairs. A hand covering someone's mouth. Isaac backed away from her like she'd just grown horns. Tamara didn't move. Not even a flinch. She stood at the side of the stage, her wine glass trembling ever so slightly in her hand. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was scanning the room, looking for me. And when our eyes finally met, across 200 stunned guests and one completely ruined evening, I did something unexpected. I smiled. Then I walked out before she could speak, before the lights came back on, before the whispers turned into full sentences. I didn't go home. I didn't even check my phone for the rest of the night. I drove to a small diner off the freeway, ordered burnt coffee and cold pancakes, and just sat there watching headlights flicker past the window. I wasn't proud. I wasn't satisfied. I was just still. For the first time in months. Tamara had spent years curating the image of a perfect executive wife. And in 6 minutes, I had pulled it all down without yelling, without violence, without becoming the villain she wanted me to be. She had nothing to pivot off. No righteous comeback. No way to paint me as unstable. She gave me every match. I simply lit the fuse. But the night wasn't over. At 12:43 a.m., I got a message from Aubrey. Just one sentence. She's blaming me now. When I finally got home, it was just after 2 a.m. The driveway was dark, but the hallway light was on. Tamara always left it on when she was awake. It was a little ironic now, that one last trace of her pretending to be the dutiful wife. Like a lighthouse guiding a ship straight into a lie. I didn't go in quietly. I wanted her to hear the door open. I wanted the creak of the floorboards to announce me. Let her stew in the silence, guessing which version of me had come home. The quiet fool she thought she could control, or the one who made her entire career implode in front of 200 of her peers. She was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her gown. No shoes. Makeup half smeared, like she tried to clean it off with a paper towel and gave up halfway through. Her hair was pinned messily to one side, and there was an untouched glass of red wine in front of her. She didn't look up. "You destroyed my life," she said flatly. I pulled out a chair across from her, sat down without a word, and waited. "I don't care about Isaac," she said after a beat. "He's a nobody. That's not the point. You cared enough to lie to me. And to Aubrey." Her eyes finally met mine. Cold. Detached. "You never really mattered to her. You know that, right? She called you Dad because it was convenient. That was always my choice." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that was all she had left. The lowest swing. A final attempt to crawl out of the grave she'd spent the past week digging. "You stole from her," I said. "You used her college account like a personal piggy bank. You made her complicit in your affair, and then you tossed her under the bus when the consequences hit. And you still think I'm the villain here?" "I built this life," she hissed. "I had to work twice as hard because of you. You were always in the background. Never pushing. Never taking charge. Just there. People pitied you, Eldon. You were wallpaper." I smiled faintly, nodding. "You know what happens to wallpaper, Tamara? It just peels off one day. Quietly. And the whole room realizes how cheap everything underneath looks." She stood suddenly, knocking over the wine glass. It shattered on the floor, red soaking into the grout like blood. She didn't flinch. "You think you've won?" "I didn't come to win," I said calmly. "I came to leave with my soul intact." She walked past me, grabbed her coat off the rack, and slammed the door on the way out. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't care. The house was quiet again, not just silent, but empty in a way that felt like relief. And then I remembered Aubrey's text. "She's blaming me now." I walked upstairs and knocked gently. Her light was on. She opened the door in an oversized hoodie, her face puffy, red around the edges. No makeup, no sarcasm. Just a 17-year-old girl trying to process that her entire idea of family was a fraud. "She told me I ruined her," Aubrey said. "That I should have come to her instead of you." "You didn't ruin her," I said gently. "She did that all on her own. She said she was going to send me to live with her sister." I sat on the edge of her bed. "She doesn't control that anymore." Aubrey blinked. "What do you mean?" I reached into my pocket and handed her a single folded sheet of paper, notarized earlier that morning. A transfer of custodial guardianship, signed by Tamara in April of last year as part of a tax strategy she'd cooked up without reading the fine print. It had never been reversed. And because of her signature, Aubrey was technically under my legal guardianship until she turned 18, which, thanks to a birthday in July, meant I had 7 full months of control. "She gave this to me last year," I said, "to write you off as a dependent and get a better refund. She thought it would help her claim the college fund for herself. Turns out, it also makes me your legal custodian until the summer." Aubrey stared at the paper like it was radioactive. "So what now?" she whispered. I stood up, walked to the door, and paused before I left. "Now," I said, "you get to decide who your family really is. And I get to decide who comes with me when I leave." Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I began packing my things, slowly, carefully. But not to run. This wasn't an escape. It was an exit with dignity. I wasn't going to vanish like Tamara's ex had years ago. I wasn't going to leave a letter and disappear. I'd be remembered, clearly, completely, by the mess I left cleaned, the silence I turned into clarity, and the girl who might finally know what it means to be loved without condition. But before I left, there was one more thing to do. One more piece she didn't know about. One more door to close that she thought was locked from the inside. Because tomorrow, The bank was going to call her about the house. And only one name was going to be on the mortgage. The morning after Tamara's meltdown at the gala, the house was quiet. Not the tense, simmering silence I'd gotten used to. This one felt earned. Clean. Like the air after a thunderstorm. Her car was gone from the driveway, which meant she'd either stayed with her sister or, more likely, with Isaac, hoping to cobble together some pathetic excuse for a lifeline. I didn't rush the morning. I made coffee, sat in my chair by the window, and watched the light pour across the living room floor, the same room where I'd once tried to make a family. And now it was mine. Not just emotionally. Legally. See, what Tamara never realized was that I'd been buying her out of the house for years. Every bonus, every extra shift, every dime I quietly funneled into principal payments, all under her nose, while she lived under the illusion that we split everything 50-50. But it was my name on the mortgage. Always had been. She had never been added to the deed. She signed away her rights when we refinanced 5 years ago, too focused on her career to read what she was signing. And that morning, I got the call from the bank. The house was now paid in full. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just felt whole. Finally, Aubrey came downstairs a few hours later, still in her pajamas, eyes raw but clearer. She sat across from me at the kitchen island, same place where her mother had once lectured me about being too soft to lead a family. "Is she coming back?" she asked. I shook my head. Probably not. But if she does, she won't be staying. Aubrey didn't respond for a long time, just picked at the edge of her sleeve, then finally said, "I don't want to go with her, even if she begs." "You don't have to," I said. "I know. I just wanted to say it." We sat there in that quiet for a long while. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "I used to think you were pathetic, that you didn't fight back because you were weak. But now I think you just didn't want to become like her." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. She stood up, walked to the hallway, then turned back. "Oh, the college fund?" she asked. I smiled. "What about it? Is it really gone?" "No," I said. "It's just got a new name on it." Her eyes went wide. "Wait, what?" "I started a new one last week. Just yours. And this time, no one's touching it but you." She blinked, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something soft in her face. Something real. She didn't cry. She didn't thank me. But she smiled. And that was enough. 3 weeks later, Tamara sent an email. No subject line. Just a short message. "You could have ruined me. You didn't." "Why?" I stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes before typing. "Because ruining you would have made me more like you. And I'm done being small." I never heard from her again. Life isn't some neat, clean fairy tale. But mine got better. I kept the house. Aubrey stayed through the end of the school year, then left for college with a full ride and a silent promise between us that not every adult in her life was temporary. I took up carpentry again, got back into motorcycle restoration. I started laughing more, sleeping better. And that Christmas, for the first time in years, the tree wasn't decorated by obligation. It was simple, quiet, just lights and a handwritten card from Aubrey, stuck right in the middle. It said, "Some people really are worth calling Dad." And for once, I believed it.